It is with great pleasure that I introduce one of our amazing healers, mediums, and teachers, Trish Smith. Trish was born with a gift to see spirit and started seeing them from a very early age. She's been a practicing professional medium since the 1980s and has lived in Cassadaga area for many years. Trish lives here in the camp just down the street where she sees clients regularly. Please join me in welcoming to the podium Trish Smith.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Happy Easter.
Happy Easter.
I love it when you respond. Good students. This day is not only a holiday, it's a day of remembrance, a day of miracles. If you think of how spiritualism recognizes all religions, that's what really drew me to it, because they recognize that there's truth in all of the major religions, and we all spring from the same tree, all have the same roots. And they recognize that everyone is equal. When Jesus was on his ministry, he went all through Palestine, and he shared that. He was teaching natural law, which is the basis of our religion. And a lot of the major religions, if you look through the core of their teachings, it's all based on natural law. They may use different words, but they all recognize it. And that's one thing I love about teaching comparative religions, because then I show people we're all equal. And that's another thing Jesus taught. Back in his time, even in biblical times, women were being persecuted and dismissed. They had less rights than men, and they were thought unable to be appreciative of learning things. So they didn't get the education. People have the wrong impression, because things have been changed, that Mary Magdalene was unclean for the wrong reasons. She was unclean because Jesus cast 7 devils out of her, and she became one of his followers and disciples. She wasn't one of the 12 recognized ones, but she was part of his group. And so were 2 other women. He had also cast devils out of them as well. And that's part of why people were astounded by him. And they asked him, have you come to change the laws? And he says, no, I came to reestablish them, to show you the laws, because women weren't thought of as less by God. And what he taught was the real teachings. And that's what natural law, no matter what you call it, universal law, God's law, hermetics, whatever term you choose to use, it's all the same thing. It's all how things work, as above, so below, as within, so without. What we put out, we receive. And that's what he was teaching. He was teaching us to love one another. He was teaching us that what you do to the least of thee, you do also unto me. And that's what's so special about the real teachings, because it recognizes everyone. It doesn't elevate anyone above another. It doesn't matter what your title is. It doesn't matter how much money, how little money, what side of the tracks you're on. It doesn't matter the color of your skin or the name you call God, because there's 78 names of God. Or 112, depending upon who you listen to. And he also knew that when you really believed, that you had the authority within you. At one time, he had 70 followers, and he gave them all the authority and the ability to go to the towns and heal and cast out demons. And they said, well, how can you do that? He says, if you believe, it's within you. And that was part of what he taught, that everyone had God within them, and that we all have the ability to create our life and to heal ourselves and to manifest. So can you imagine the fear that was built up within the people of power? The people, the priests at that time, the government at that time. And that's why he was feared. And that's why they were concerned. Because every town he went to, there'd be a crowd waiting, because they all wanted to learn, because they heard of him raising the dead, not just Lazarus, but there was others as well. And all the demons he had cast out. You probably have heard about the whole herd of swine that a man had come up with, had been brought to him, who had several demons. People had tried to cast him out, and they kept coming back. So Jesus says to the man, and the demon says, we are legion. And then Jesus commanded them to leave and go into the herd of swine. And then the swine herd ran into the ocean and drowned. These are all miracles that he showed, that he told his disciples after he arose, which I'll get to in a moment, that they would have the abilities to do. But he said, everyone has the abilities within them. Now think about the times. You had limited connection between areas of the world. They didn't have telephones. They didn't have easy travel to go from continent to continent. Yet during that time frame, they were all learning the same things. They all were coming up with the same information, the same knowledge. And that made people very concerned, and that's why they didn't want it known that this was the truth. Especially when you've got someone who can not only calm the seas when the boat is about to sink, but when the fishermen hadn't been able to catch anything all day, and he orders the fish to fill the nets, which they did, because he knew there was going to be a horde of 5,000 people that had to be fed. But they only took the 5 fish and 2 loaves of bread, and they fed all those people, because he showed them how to manifest. He showed them that if you believe, there is plenty for everyone. And they not only had plenty to feed everyone, but they had baskets of remaining food. These are all the things that were important to his teachings. But how many do we remember? Do we remember that we have God within us? Do we remember that we can manifest if we believe and become aligned? Do we believe that we have power within us, that we are all equal, that we are all capable, and we are all justified in having this type of love and ability? Or do we believe that we are not capable? Do we believe that, oh, I'm not good enough? because that's also been thrown at us throughout the years. So when I think of Jesus and his teachings, I also think of how he knew the whole time before he was intimidated by the Pharisees and so forth, that he was going to be betrayed by his disciples. Not all of them. But he got to where he was, during one of the towns he visited, they started questioning him. Whose authority are you working on? And why are you healing on the Sabbath? And he brought it right back to them very calmly. And he says, if one of your farm animals was ill, would you not heal it? So why can't I heal on the Sabbath for a person? Is that not what you're supposed to do? And then he went to the hill with James and John and Peter because he was going to meet and pray, because he had only a few days before Passover. So he goes up there and he meets with Elias and Moses in spirit. And the disciples were stunned, and they wanted to build a tabernacle for each one. And God comes in voice and says, "This is my son who I am very proud of." He was trying to explain to them that you don't need a tabernacle to prove who you are. You don't need to know anything that is going to make you flashy or bring attention to yourself. That's why he came into town on a donkey, because he wanted to show that he was just like everyone. It's just what he had inside. And during that time, he told the disciples, he sort of rebuked them, and he says, I will be deceived very shortly, so don't be in a hurry to try and be with me and by my right hand, which is what they wanted. And they get to town, and sure enough, they start their Passover dinner, and he mentioned it again. And sure enough, Judas Iscariot had betrayed him for 30 coins of silver. But then Jesus said, before the cock crows 3 times, I will be betrayed again. And Peter was that. He denied Jesus 3 times. He didn't know him. But the real miracles are him knowing how to transmute the betrayals into strength. And that's one thing that we're supposed to do. That's real alchemy. That's what the real alchemy was about. They used transmuting lead into gold to deceive people that weren't ready to hear the truth. And when you take betrayal and you can transmute it into strength, and you take hateful words or actions and not react to it, but instead step back and calmly respond or just ignore it, then you are showing the kind of strength that empowers you. And that's what he tried to teach throughout all this. He knew he was going to be betrayed, He knew he was going to die. He also knew he was going to rise. See, people keep Jesus on the cross, and they forget the miracles that he taught through the time that he was here, actually in Palestine, teaching, and what they represented, that we all have the ability to create our life if we believe it. If we choose to stay aligned, if we choose to not react, but instead to respond, if we choose to allow ourselves to come to a higher vibration instead of sinking into lower fear-based energies of anger, frustration, retaliation. That's what it's all about. And those are what his miracles were. And then you get to the day that he arises, and he pushes back the stone, and Mary Magdalene and the other two women are there. And he chose to come out at that time knowing that they would be there so that they would be the first people he spoke to. Because he knew that they believed. He knew that their love was pure. And they didn't have any fear. They didn't have any doubts. So he knew that he could talk to the disciples in a little bit. And what did he have? One of them was doubting Thomas. And that's when he said, "These things and many others you will be able to do." And we can. Jesus spoke with Moses and Elias. Isn't that what most of us do? We speak to spirits, right? We all work on trying to transmute times in our life into something better, so that we don't live in a lower vibration, so that we don't get stuck in the wheel of hate and discord and chaos, so that we can move forward and enjoy our lives and grow and learn. Because when we don't learn the lesson, it gets repeated over and over and over again, till eventually you get the spiritual 2x4, and trust me, it hurts, because it's a severe lesson. And I can honestly say, I know. I was, for several years, many years ago, I had my own businesses. But I still did spiritual work. And I thought that would be fine. But I started getting messages, you have to quit your businesses. You have to do this spiritual work full time. I'm going, what are you talking about? I'm not Gypsy Rose on the corner. Who in the world does this for full time? How am I going to keep a roof over my head? So I kept putting it off. Then one day, okay. I'll close my businesses. And I got a job. And it was like, no, you're not listening. And I'm going, I have to keep a roof over my head. I'm doing more spiritual work. No. And then one day a friend asked me to give her a reading. And I had a really uncomfortable feeling about it. I said, no, not today. There's something wrong. And she said, please, I really want you to give me a reading and do one for yourself. I really love to hear how you get all this information. And I says, there's something wrong. I don't want to do it today. Well, she kept nagging me, and I gave in. And when I got to doing one on my own, I'm going, uh-oh. Because I knew within 6 months I was going to be in a really bad accident. I knew that I may not survive. They gave it to me. I not only got it verbally, but I felt it. I felt the impact. The whole reading, I was in it. I'm going, oh, you've never done this before. You going to stop? Nope, you got to have it. I'm going, oh. I says, what can I do to avoid this? And they says, nothing, it's too late. I says, oh, the spiritual 2x4, and they didn't answer him. But it was the kind of time when they don't answer that you know it's yes. When you get warnings, pay attention. And we all get messages, but most of the time we don't pay attention. But when we get a warning, you really need to pay attention, because the universe doesn't want anybody to have problems. They want everyone to thrive and grow. And when we do that, we're more apt to help others thrive and grow. Everyone can equally be happy, and we should be. The universe doesn't play favorites. It's a mirror. What we put out, we attract. And just because you may have a certain status in life doesn't mean that you put out something better. It's what's inside you that is projected. And they want everyone to be the same, enjoy it. And we all have that capability, and that's what the real meaning behind Easter is. Yes, it's fertility. Yes, it's fun. It's spring. And that's bringing forth new growth. And we should remember that too. And when you think about it, isn't that also part of what Jesus was bringing forth? New growth? And the teachings that could help everyone thrive and have a fertile manifestation of health and wealth, whatever is needed in their life. So if we remember that, and remember the sharing that he did, then we understand the true reason of the messages that were given. And I hope you all have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Thank you.
Thank you so much.